Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mr. Warren Hayes. Ever since Brock Lesnar lost the Universal Championship and basically left Paul Heyman as an advocate without a cause, there's been a lot of rumor and speculation as to who Heyman should pair up with next. But currently, the biggest rumor making the rounds is that he could possibly end up attached to Kevin Owens. In a way, it makes sense. In kayfabe, KO's career has taken a downturn. He can't back up what he says he'll do, so injecting him with business mastermind Paul Heyman would be a logical next step into getting Owens back to his winning, prize-fighting ways. But I, like many other people out there, feel like putting two of your best promos together is useless. Kevin Owens is not only fantastic on the mic, but is fantastic as a performer as well. He takes every storyline and every opportunity he is given and spins gold out of it. If there's one dude on the roster who does not need a mouthpiece, it's KO. Now, of course, there is precedent for managers to end up with good talkers. Certain past Heyman guys who didn't need Paul's verbose dexterity were nonetheless saddled together. So it's not like a KO Heyman pairing would be completely out of nowhere, and it'd be entertaining as hell too. But there are certain wrestlers in WWE right now who would benefit much more from having Paul Heyman acting as their advocate, not only for the mic skills, but because of the aura of success that comes with Paul. He's a promoter, he's a businessman, an entrepreneur, a visionary. After all, he did manage the longest reigning Universal Champion of all time. The point is that kind of rub can be useful to any wrestler. So here are my top 5 WWE wrestlers who should be paired with Paul Heyman. Number 5, Rusev. Everybody loves Rusev. Rusev is good. He's a complete package. He's charismatic. He can talk. He can go in the ring. But you could argue the main problem keeping Rusev away from being a true upper tier player in WWE is credibility. And this is not on him. This is due to booking. Oh, and by the way, the credibility thing is going to be a recurring theme on this list. Once considered a threat, a challenge to the likes of John Cena, Rusev was lowered on the card as, for lack of a better term, a jobber to the stars. The whole Rusev Day nonsense was supposed to be that, just nonsense. And while it got over super organically as fans bought into it, myself included, it's still somewhat of a goofy storyline. And there's nothing wrong with Goofy. I like Goofy. WWE doesn't like their top stars to be all that goofy. Imagine Paul coming in and taking over the direction of his career. Get rid of the wife, get rid of the songbird, help Rusev focus on getting back his killer instinct. And you know what? You can still keep Rusev Day going. Instead of Rusev Day being a celebration or a holiday, it could be like an ominous mark, a date that you, as his opponent, have with destruction and pain and loss. And it would make sense for Paul Heyman to join up with a super athlete like Rusev, who has the size and the ability to look good and strong in the ring. Just like Brock. If we're talking about the business side of Paul Heyman, then you can definitely see him going all in with Rusev and backing him 100%. Number 4, Hideo Itami. Now, hang on a second. Give me a moment, all right? I know he's on 205 Live, and 205 Live it exists in its own little bubble, separate from everything else that happens in WWE. And there's probably no way that a guy like Paul Heyman will end up with the cruiserweights. But hear me out. Hideo Itami is a legend in Japan. The man formerly known as Kenta has wrestled main events for years and has been an influence on the careers of many contemporary wrestlers like Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. But his path to WWE hasn't been as stellar as the one he had in Japan. He premiered on Raw to much fanfare, but fell flat, and he ended up on 205 Live without much success afterwards. Recently, he's been kicking up his heel antics a notch on 205 Live, and he's been cranking the aggression in his ring work, giving us some of that strong style he's known for. His profile continues to rise as his character develops, and a big part of his character is demanding respect from the audience, bellowing out, "Respect me!" at every possible moment. And when you think about it, that character trait makes sense. He's a main eventer, he's a legend. He expects that kind of respect from the audience. But he isn't getting it in WWE. That frustrates him. And with his English not being exactly up to snuff, it's a barrier to him getting that aspect of his character over. Now, should we get Paul Heyman here as his advocate, he could prop up Itami as an international champion, as a man who has proven himself over and over again on the biggest stages in Japan, and that his presence in the ring should be enough to command our respect. He should not be wrestling these newcomers. He should be wrestling champions and winning titles as he deserves. It would immediately shoot Itami up to new heights on 205 Live, establishing him as a huge heel and a legit contender for the title, breathing some fire into the career of this Japanese stalwart. Number 3, Chad Gable. Chad Gable is unquestionably one of the most well-rounded and exciting athletes in WWE right now. Paired with Jason Jordan as American Alpha in NXT, it appeared that the pair were both destined for greatness, together or apart. And while Jordan was the recipient of a pretty big push, Gable has floundered outside of a semi-successful tag run with Shelton Benjamin. Since the Superstar shakeup sent him back to Raw, he's been barely used. This despite the fact that he always looks good in the ring and shows flashes of personality when given mic time. Enter Paul Heyman, the Visionary. Considering that Paul Heyman has spent the better part of the past few years with champions and pillars of wrestling, it only makes sense that at this point in his career, he would look to the future of wrestling, to develop the future of the business. And the future is Chad Gable. Heyman could easily call upon his past associations and successes to legitimize his new association with Gable. He could say things like, there was a time where I revolutionized the business, that I saw opportunities and talent in places where most other promoters ignored. And I'm here today with the next greatest thing in wrestling, Chad Gable. And then he could say, that isn't a prediction, it's a spoiler. Imagine then Chad Gable going on a tear, reinvigorated by Heyman's vision and guidance. Gable has all the attributes to make it work and come across as credible. Both would benefit so much from this association. Number 2, Bobby Roode. Oh, Bobby. Sweet, delicate Bobby. How we fondly remember your NXT run where you essentially ran the place with your unbridled and unmatched dickishness. How we long for the days of your new era Ric Flair persona that made you such an amazing commodity, as opposed to now, with your constant forced grin and that catchphrase you plug every 2 or 3 sentences. Again, in this circumstance, Bobby Roode is a talented wrestler that has been booked so poorly, he now suffers from a severe lack of credibility. And unlike what most people think, at this stage, I don't think a heel turn will be the equivalent of strapping a rocket to his career. Yes, his character is much more interesting as a heel, but he'll be fighting an uphill battle to re-establish himself again regardless. But should he be paired with Paul Heyman, not only would it accelerate his rise, but it would be a logical association as well. Both portray airs of success and grandiose hyperbole. Both are enamored with themselves, and both are enamored with power. So it's a natural fit that would help elevate a wrestler back up to a position that we know he can handle. Number 1, the Authors of Pain. Speaking of NXT cock-ups, it baffles the imagination that the main roster call-up of the Authors of Pain has been so bungled. It was so simple. You have 2 big dudes running out of nowhere. Have them demolish their opponents. They are monsters that run in and destroy the opposition, leaving broken bodies in their wake. Have them steamroll their way to the tag team titles. They are the ones to be chased. They are the obstacle. They are the Mount Everest of the tag division. It was so simple, but it was messed up nonetheless. They should not be having competitive matches with Titus Worldwide. But this is what has been done to one of the most legitimate and dominating tag teams in NXT. So again, just like Bobby Roode and a whole bunch of people on this list, they are suffering from a huge credibility problem that is entirely to blame on booking. And Add on top of that, these guys are not talkers. They're built to fight, not to cut promos. Why do you think they were managed by Paul Ellering? Give them Paul Heyman, and now Heyman would be the absolute perfect mouthpiece for the duo. He would get them over as the monsters they are. He could channel his good old Paul E days of ECW with his visceral need for violence, putting the entire Raw roster on check. Just like Brock, AOP looked the part of monsters. The fit would be absolutely natural with Heyman. We would completely buy his reigning, defending, undisputed line once the AOP are tag team champions. And you know, if WWE is bent on giving Kevin Owens to Heyman, well, they can always throw in AOP in there as well. That would make one hell of a stable. So that's my list. I wonder what you guys thought. You can leave a comment right here on YouTube, or you can come hit me up on Twitter. And if you like this video, why don't you just go ahead, like and subscribe. All that stuff really helps out, and you know what? On top of that, it means a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.